was supposed to be a simple job, just a 2-week gig house sitting in an old Victorian mansion deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. The owner, a frail old woman named Mrs. Blackwood, had given me a tour. Her voice a reedy whisper that barely disturbed the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. She pointed out the essentials: the kitchen, the thermostat, the master bedroom where I be staying. But her tour conveniently skipped the one room at the very end of the second floor hallway. The one with the heavy oak door and the large, ornate iron lock. Just an old storage room, she'd said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. The key was lost years ago. No need to worry about it. I was a college student desperate for cash, so I just nodded, eager to get her on her way and settle in. The money was too good to pass up. The first few days were peaceful, almost idyllic. I spent my time reading on the large wraparound porch, listening to the symphony of the forest. The house was a time capsule, filled with antique furniture, faded portraits, and an unsettling quiet that felt heavy, ancient. By the fourth night, the quiet began to feel less like peace and more like a presence. I started hearing things, a faint scratching sound, like a mouse behind the walls. But it always seemed to come from the direction of that locked room. I tried to ignore it, turning up the volume on my laptop, but the sound would persist. A soft, rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape. Then came the whispers. They were so faint at first, I thought I was imagining them. They'd slither into my hearing right as I was drifting off to sleep. Indecipherable murmurs, like a conversation happening just on the other side of a thick wall. One night, I jolted awake, my heart hammering against my ribs. A child's voice, clear as day, had whispered right next to my ear, "He's hungry." I turned out every light in the master bedroom and stayed awake until the sun came up, huddled under the covers like a little kid. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I walked past that locked door, the hairs on my arms would stand on end. The air around it felt colder, heavier. The scratching was louder now, more insistent. It wasn't a mouse. It sounded bigger, like long fingernails dragging against old wood. That evening, I was making dinner in the kitchen when I heard a loud thud from upstairs. It sounded like something heavy had been dropped right outside the locked room. I grabbed the heaviest skillet I could find and crept up the grand staircase. The hallway was dark, the only light spilling from the doorway of my room. And there, on the floor, directly in front of the locked door, was one of Mrs. Blackwood's family portraits. It had been hanging on the opposite wall. The glass was shattered, and the painted eyes of a severe-looking man seemed to stare right through me. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Across the man's face were 3 long, deep scratch marks. That was my breaking point. I called Mrs. Blackwood. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. I left a frantic message, my voice shaking, telling her I was leaving, that something was wrong with the house. I packed my bags in a frenzy, throwing my clothes into my duffel bag, my hands trembling so badly I could barely zip it shut. As I raced down the stairs, a new sound stopped me dead in my tracks. A low, guttural growl. It was coming from upstairs, from behind that door. It wasn't an animal. It was a sound of pure, primal hunger. And then, a child's giggle echoed through the silent house. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted out the front door, not even bothering to close it behind me. I fumbled for my car keys, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. As my headlights cut through the darkness of the driveway, they illuminated the second-story windows. For a split second, I saw it, a small face, pale and thin, peeking out from behind the curtain of a guest's bedroom window. It smiled at me, a wide, unnatural grin, before disappearing back into the shadows. I slammed my foot on the gas and sped away, the gravel driveway crunching under my tires. I drove for an hour before I felt safe enough to pull over. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it, my blood running cold. It was a picture of the inside of the locked room. It was completely bare, except for the long, deep scratches that covered every inch of the floor, the walls, and the inside of the door. And in the center of the room, scrawled in what looked like dried blood, were the words, "He's still hungry." Underneath the picture was a single line of text, "You forgot to feed him. Now it's your turn." I looked up from my phone into my rearview mirror. In the reflection, sitting in my back seat, was a small, pale-faced child from the window. Its smile was even wider now, and its eyes were pitch black. I never made it home. My car was found abandoned on a lonely stretch of mountain road a week later. The police searched for me for months, but they never found a single trace. Mrs. Blackwood was eventually questioned. She claimed she didn't know anything, that she'd never hired a house there. In fact, she swore she'd sold that old house over 20 years ago after a terrible family tragedy. She said the new owners had a young son who went missing one night. They said he just vanished from his room. The one at the end of the hall. The one with the big, ornate lock on the door. Every now and then, a new ad appears online. A house sitter wanted for a beautiful old mansion in the West Virginia mountains. The pay is incredible. The job is simple. Just don't forget to feed the thing upstairs. Because if you do, it finds another way to eat. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next descent into the dark. Stay safe out there.